Alright guys, this is my update on the BYD Seal Premium. Now I've been driving this car for almost 5,000 kilometers and I have signed up for Uber to actually drive as many Ks as I can in this car in a short period of time because I wanted to check whether it's doable, one, on Uber and it will still make sense financially. Two, I wanted to get people's impressions and feedback on the car, but then also three, I just wanted to see how annoyed I would get with a lot of kilometers in a short period of time. And the only way to really rack up that many Ks and get yourself into many different environments and scenarios is by driving Uber. So that's what I've been doing on the weekends for the past few weeks, as well as doing my daily commutes and everything around town with the car. Safe to say I have definitely put it through its paces. Big shout out to the guys at Share EV. Now I am paying and renting this car, so it's not a promoted or sponsored review or feedback. But check them out. They made it easy for us to basically request for them to go and buy the car. We'll rent it and review it, and then they'll put it in their rental fleet for rideshare drivers and accident replacement vehicles. So make sure you check them out, shareev.com.au. They've got a bit of a fleet here in Brisbane, as well as several other cities around the country, including Melbourne, Sydney, and Perth. Now, back to the BYD side of things. So this particular car was really intriguing for me. I did 95,000 kilometers in the Tesla Model 3 last year, and as much as I loved the ease of ownership for that particular car, there were a few quirks that really annoyed me, a few other things that I thought could have been better developed. Suspension around Brisbane was absolutely horrible because it was very rough and tough, and it was like driving a go-kart on a normal road. The handling was fantastic because it drove like a go-kart on normal roads and was very engaging and dynamic, but the real pain of it was when you just wanted to cruise or drive around, you felt every single bump around town, and that's just not what you want in a car that is a $60,000 car. So when I heard that the BYD was bringing out their Seal, I wanted to test out whether there was any advantage in going the premium option, which is this one, which has a 630 kilometer range from an 82 kilowatt hour battery pack, versus the Tesla Model 3 standard range that I had last year, which had a 410 kilometer range from a 55 kilowatt hour battery pack. You'll have to forgive me, I'll correct it in the comments. It's been a little while since I've been in that car. But what I will say is the additional range is an absolute godsend from a ease and practicality point. So because I didn't need the additional top up every few days, I've gone sometimes a week without having to charge the car, which is fantastic. But it's also made me think, I never really was inconvenienced by having to go home, plug in the Model 3 last year and plug in every day. So what I would recommend is test out the standard dynamic version as well as the premium and see which of the two you prefer. I'm going to request a dynamic from the guys at BYD, so I'll see if they'll lend us one for a review, because I'm really curious to see whether you can actually live with that car just as easily as you can live with the premium version that has the 630 kilometer range. Now, on average, I've achieved 550 to 600 kilometers in terms of actual range with this car, and that's in part because, one, aerodynamically, they've done a good job and it looks gorgeous, but two, it's just really efficient on the highway. So on the highway, I can get efficiency as low as 11.8 and 11.2 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. And around town, it will hover somewhere between 13 and 15, depending on what I'm doing. So not too dissimilar in that capacity to the Tesla Model 3 that I had. In terms of styling, this is just absolutely gorgeous. Everywhere I go, people will look at the car. And that's one thing that definitely strikes me with the BYD Seal. It is a very good looking car and very well designed from that perspective. Now let's talk about the couple of things that I didn't like. So bear with me while I open the front boot, or the frunk. Now, one of the things that I have missed from the Tesla Model 3 is that BYD has gone with a much smaller cavity here. Now I have some sunshades for the glass roof that's inside, but this is the cavity that you get here, so it's not all that big for the space that's underneath here. In the Tesla Model 3, I used to be able to fit a carry-on suitcase in here, That's not the case with this particular car. You're going to be very much using this for shopping or just additional storage or any charging infrastructure that you might have that you need to bring with you. Sorry, charging accessories, not the infrastructure. And that's kind of what you're going to have fitted there. Windscreen washer fluid top-up area is right there. And that's kind of all you have underneath here, and a lot of plastic. So it would have been nice to see a slightly bigger front boot because that was really convenient in the Model 3. The other thing is it would be nice to have the release on the key. I know that the BYD has an app. It's just from a key perspective, if I've got to carry the key anyway, it would have been nice to have a button on the key just to pop the front boot just as easily as it was to do that in the Tesla Model 3 from the app. Moving around to the side. Styling has been fantastic. The door handles have been very, very easy to get people in and out of the car. None of my friends have had to question how do you open the door handle, because as much as the Model 3 door handles were amazing in terms of being like a fighter jet style push and pull, a lot of people didn't know how to use them. So these just pop out the minute you press the unlock button, and they fold flush when you lock the cars nice and easily. So it's nice and flush. If we were driving, they would also retract so that you have a nice aerodynamic surface as well. So once again, a very simple, very easy design for this door handle, similar to the Model S in the early days versus the Model 3. Now from an Uber perspective, this was interesting because I drove a Model 3 for a while, and that was the big thing. How do you get in? How do you get out? Because it was just not traditional in the functionality, and it got really tiresome when I was testing that car out for a long-term review on Uber on how that would actually function. So that's that part there. Moving into the back of the car. Now this is the space that everyone gets in and where I've had the most amount of feedback. Now, legroom, as you can see, is tremendous. The front seat is actually in the convenience feature setting, which means it's the whole way back currently to where it would normally be versus where I actually would sit. So if I'm sitting in the front, it's actually slightly forward. You still have some pockets and holders all through here, but it's a very spacious rear seat, and a lot of people comment as to just how much room there is in the back. They love the glass roof, and other side to that is they love all the soft touch materials and just all the nice finishes along the doors, and they're holding up relatively well given that this car has now close to 8,000 kilometers on top of the original kilometers that it had after I picked it up and rented it from these guys. So it's very impressive from that side. And it has a coat hook just located on both of these two doors to make it super easy for people to put a coat on there if you are somewhere where it's not Queensland and you're not dying in humidity every day. So let's check out the back. Now with the back, one of the great features is that it's actually wide enough and tall enough to fit 2 suitcases in the back without too much trouble. In the Model 3, it was kind of a tight fit for anything bigger than 2 medium-sized suitcases. However, the Model 3 did have one advantage, and that was this space underneath here was actually big enough for a carry-on suitcase. Now, in this car, you could get a carry-on duffel bag, but you definitely couldn't get a carry-on suitcase in here. And it's quite full with all of your other charging gear as well. So you're limited on a little bit on the room there. But overall, it's a pretty reasonable boot space. Given the amount of additional space there is in the back seat, would it be nice to maybe just make this a little bit deeper or a little bit further forward so that you could have a little bit more space in the boot, and then it would have been a perfect car. So that's probably the only commentary I have on this. But boot going up and down, it's seamless, it's nice and easy, and 0 issues. Now, charging. As you can see, we've been charging here while we've been filming this review. We came here at 34%. We filmed another video. We're now at 68%. We're down to 30.4 kilowatt hour speeds in terms of the charging. And that's a mixture between the car and also the charging station here. This is actually one of the older Queensland Electric superhighway chargers. And being tritium, they are a little bit hit and miss with their reliability and speeds, but it's doing all right. The one thing I'll say is I've tested this car for the first 2,000 Ks as if I was publicly charging and I had no infrastructure at home. Now, I don't know if I would recommend the car to someone that doesn't have the ability to charge at home, where it's nice and easy to reverse the car in or pull the car in, plug it into your electricity at home and experience a more affordable charging rate. A lot of these chargers around Brisbane and around Australia in general have started increasing in price quite a bit as electricity prices go higher, and it's now getting more and more expensive to charge. So At some of the charges, on average, it's been between $50 and $60 for me to do a 5% to 100% charge on this car, which has an 82 kilowatt hour battery, to do 600 kilometers of driving. Now, in a conventional hybrid vehicle, that wouldn't have taken anywhere near as long and would have been much quicker and much easier. So that's where I would talk about pricing as maybe something that you need to consider a little bit differently. We've talked about fast charging, let's talk about home charging. So if you had this car and you were able to charge at home, this is a fantastic way to save money on your daily commute and have a very comfortable car still. So on average at home, you can experience some discounted electricity rates from some electricity providers that will give you a rate of as low as 8 cents a kilowatt hour charging between midnight and 6 a.m., which means you could charge this car for around $6 to $8. So depending on how much charge you had left when you go home, but somewhere between $6 and $8 is what it would cost you to do 600 kilometers of driving. Now, if you have a standard electricity rate, so me at home, I charge with Ampol. With their electricity plan, I get 26 cents per kilowatt hour. So that means that this car will cost me somewhere between $15 to $20 to charge to get that 600 Ks, depending on how much charge I have when I get home. So a fantastic way to save money on those longer trips, but definitely when you're out and about, if you're relying just solely on public charging, it may not be the best option for you. So with that, let us know in the comments what you think about the charging options, what charging option you would use, and overall, if it's a car that you would consider.